I thought, whew, done. It's done. I no longer dissociate. Beat that. Woohoo. I didn't realize that it was just an alternate form of dissociation manifesting in some very miraculously unique ways. She was reliving the implicit data rather than explicitly remembering it. So astoundingly profound and divinely miraculous. Through automated thoughts, feelings, sensations, action patterns, decision-making tendencies and abilities, etc. Baby Bunny's coming to join. Shh, don't tell anyone I have a Baby Bunny on my lap. My 27th thesis statement is that dissociation is an umbrella term to describe hundreds of unique experiences that may stem from undercoupled neural wiring, independent activity within the neurobiological social engagement system, brain-body dysregulation, or other neurobiological particulars. All of this energetic wiring, though, may be traced back to past moments of unfulfilled attachment needs that directly impacted the style in which the brain-body system became wired and then continued navigating and regulating through unfolding moments of personal experience. I discovered a miraculously wondrous, fascinatingly unique form of dissociation where everyday sensations and decision-making tendencies and abilities exclusively stem from implicit memories sculpted during past years that do not have neural connectivity with more updated information. So you're here in the present day as who you are, but the way that the unconscious body-mind is experiencing and cultivating emotional sensations, feelings, somatic sensations, inclinations about what and how to approach or avoid, and other elements of decision-making tendencies and abilities, all of that data is instead coming from wiring from way long ago that doesn't have connectivity with the now. So you got the neurobiological social engagement system, and every year has added neural data to this system with a bunch of different roles. And so you're over here in present day, but the way the unconscious body-mind is activating, it's pulling its data from way over here, and that data does not have neural connectivity or unconscious linkage with other forms of neural associations. Because remember that memories are all abstract associations, and they do not store the past. Memories couldn't care less about what's already happened. Memories exist to provide navigation in present and potential moments. So while we move through life, how we're automatically thinking and feeling and having inclinations about how to move through our days regarding everyday choices, big and small, all of those elements of personal experience are actually stemming from the activation of memories unconsciously. So for example, you might be a 40-year-old, but your unconscious body-mind is directly pulling its data regarding feelings-based sensations and decision-making tendencies and abilities from neural wiring sculpted during your 20s. Then the unconscious body-mind is pulling its energetic data from these past experiences decades ago without unconscious access to more recent neural data. So even though you're here at age 40 or in your 40s, the manner in which the unconscious body-mind is instinctively maneuvering unfolding moments of reality, including personal identity and personal experience, is directly stemming from this neural wiring back during your 20s. And that can create some very unique dissociative experiences, but they won't feel like dissociation because you're still present with yourself, you're still present in the moment, and it's still connecting with some aspects of you or the yous that have been, so it won't necessarily feel like dissociation. But it may be described as dissociation because there's a lack of neural association with all of the updated data. So the ability to maneuver unfolding moments is shifted towards an alternate version of reality due to unique neural activity. I have a personal example of how this unfolds, where the unconscious body-mind is specifically pulling its data from implicit memories wired during past years that don't have connectivity with more recent intel. About a year ago, I was able to reach a point in my personal healing journey where I had transformed the foundation of the neural wiring that developed during early childhood trauma and had been continually impacting my brain-body system beyond awareness. It took about 3 years of daily work to uncover the suppressed trauma and transmute its energetic intel. I finally reached a point where that experience from decades ago was no longer affecting how my brain and my body knew how to navigate itself, including regulation. So I reached this point in my healing journey, but then that actually began a new period of healing that I only started to recently understand in its fullness. Once the core of that childhood trauma had been transmuted, my brain and my body proceeded through this miraculous process of completing stages of early neurodevelopment. It began during very early childhood and very gradually progressed through stages of adolescence. And it took many, many months for this process to unfold. Discover more mystical magic about this topic in a known bonus feature titled Fascinating Marvels of Healing from Early Childhood Trauma, Kristen's Second Adolescence. Explore further at youtube.com/Kristen Chronicles and or kristenwindsor.com/known. Altogether, it took approximately 10 to 12 months to finish progressing through these stages of early neurodevelopment to complete the brain-body growth that had been halted during my original neurodevelopment because of how traumatic stress had affected my unconscious realities. So all throughout my life, I had actually been experiencing age regression, but didn't know about it. And then once I was learning about this, I was in very deep, intensive age regression where I was going all the way back to infancy. And this happened daily for several years. And then gradually, each of my many, many states of consciousness went through their own progression of neurodevelopment. So there was about a dozen different child states of consciousness, and each one of them went through their very gradual process of healing the neurodevelopment that they had personally experienced being halted during the original neurodevelopment. And then once all the amnesic walls were broken down and there was just one child state of consciousness left, and then the adult self that I was, where all the other states of consciousness had gradually experienced healing homecomings as neural data gradually integrated throughout all the different nervous systems and brain hemispheres, etc. And then it was another 10 to 12 months for that final last standing child state of consciousness who was associated with the core data from the original trauma. It took about 10 to 12 months to complete the final stages of neurodevelopment that had been halted during early childhood so that every part of me could grow into the adult that I am today. During those months, at the time, I did not think that I was dissociating because I was fully connected with my body and I was fully connected with the present moment. And so I didn't think there was any more dissociation because it used to be really intense and I had no connection with my body and no connection with the present moment of experience. So once I had that, I thought, whew, done. It's done. I no longer dissociate. Beat that. Woohoo. I didn't realize that it was just an alternate form of dissociation manifesting in some very miraculously unique ways. What was happening is during those months, the automated styles of feeling emotions and the automated styles of having decision-making tendencies and abilities were directly stemming from neural wiring experienced during my original neurodevelopment. This is like my second go around at neurodevelopment. And during this process, I was basically reliving all the neural data sculpted during the original period of my neurodevelopment. All the different feelings and decision-making patterns I experienced during elementary school were unconsciously relived as that neural wiring gradually achieved healing. And then all of the emotions and sensations and decision-making tendencies and abilities, approach avoidance tendencies, the manner in which I made decisions in every moment and even perceived elements of those decisions was stemming from middle school. And then all that data was stemming from the data sculpted during my high school years. And it was this very gradual progression as I repeated the stages of neurodevelopment that had never reached full completion because of this suppressed childhood trauma. So once that energetic intel was transmuted, then my brain and my body proceeded through all these stages of neurodevelopment. And during those months, I was reliving the implicit data sculpted during those past years. So here I am in my mid-20s, but the manner in which my unconscious body-mind was navigating unfolding moments was stemming from neural data during adolescence and even stages earlier than that. But I did not know that at the time because it's almost impossible to have conscious awareness about unconscious neural activity. When it's unfolding, it is the sense of reality. And you can't necessarily observe the distinction between your automated sense of reality and what it might otherwise be. Because the ability to understand what it might otherwise be would stem from consciousness applying its power flowing through the brain-body system. But if the brain-body system is over here in this unique experience, then consciousness can't necessarily or immediately reach the understandings of how else reality might potentially be experienced. And only once I've reached this point where I understand the distinction between experiencing myself at the age I am now and how my experiences felt last year, now I can understand how those were dissociative. But during those experiences, they did not feel like dissociation. And this is important to keep in mind as we maneuver our everyday healing journeys through life. There may be unique experiences that don't really make sense. We might not understand why we're feeling something. We might not understand why we made a certain decision. We might not understand why we did this or didn't do that or said this or didn't say that, because those automated inclinations are stemming from the activation of memory data far beyond our awareness. And remember, there's hundreds of trillions of neural networks carrying memory data, and its activity is completely unconscious. So when we're consciously observing ourselves within our experiences, then we don't necessarily always have this instinctive understanding about where all this data is coming from. And so having the chance to kind of explore this can help bring awareness to this so we can have a little more power while maneuvering our healing journeys through life. So this unique form of dissociation involves independent neural activity throughout implicit memories that were created during past years, and that data is activating independently. It doesn't have neural connectivity with other associations, and so there's dissociation. But rather that being some kind of a disconnect, it's really a unique connection, as this data is providing unconscious navigation with an identity and experience, but the self within the moment can't necessarily observe where that data is coming from, why it's being activated, or how it's impacting unfolding experiences. And whether it feels like it or not, it can produce a variety of unique dissociative experiences, where individuals might not be able to fully associate with the fullness of all that they truly are to effectively engage in the newness of each unfolding moment. Just for a fun-filled exploration of these fascinatingly unique dissociative experiences, I'd like to share a few examples. The following examples focus on unique dissociative experiences stemming from independent activation of implicit procedural memory data from early stages of neurodevelopment. My brain and my body basically went through this gradual process of reliving various action patterns that had been sculpted when I was first going through neurodevelopment during original childhood. There were also many other experiences, however, that specifically stemmed from implicit emotional memory data activation. And so my brain and my body went through a process of reliving implicit emotional memories, where my brain and my body were activating that data and re-experiencing emotions throughout my original stages of neurodevelopment. And during that process, this data gradually became rewired and integrated. But specifically, the following examples really focus on implicit procedural memories, where my body had gone through action patterns while it was young. Those experiences created neural data. And then last year in 2020, my body-brain system was miraculously reliving those innate movement programs while progressing through final stages of neurodevelopment that had been halted due to early childhood trauma. The neuroscience of these unique manifestations of dissociation are so beautifully divine and miraculously astounding. And when we can look at the neuroscience and honor the unique miracles that consciousness is divinely encountering, we expand personal power within any type of unique dissociative situation. Another little quick insight. My body-brain system had been going through this kind of process for many years before that, but I actually don't have conscious memory of those experiences due to unique trauma-related amnesia. The following experiences are from memories I've recovered from the time period right after all the amnesic walls had been broken down and there were no more switches of consciousness. There were just shifts of consciousness while healing with adaptable consciousness condition. Of the infinite, many hundreds of thousands of miraculous wonders I've encountered, here are just a few examples. Once upon a time, little Kristen, when my brain and my body was young for the first time, not dissociatively young, but actually physically young. Once upon a time, little Kristen learned how to swim for the very first time. She was at a little pool in the neighborhood, and some neighbors were helping her and her brother and this other woman's 2 children learn how to swim in the swimming pool. As swimming lessons progressed, the woman explained, okay, we're going to play a little game. I am going to throw coins into the bottom of the swimming pool, and you need to go underwater and collect them. And so it was a little game that was part of the swimming lessons when little Kristen was learning how to swim for the very first time. Approximately 20 years later, 2 decades, 20 years later, while Kristen was going through final stages of halted neurodevelopment last year during 2020, Kristen was at a neighborhood swimming pool, and she had this idea to throw coins into the bottom of the pool and go underwater with goggles and collect them all. And she moved through those exact action patterns. At the time, Kristen had no idea where the idea was coming from or why. There was no awareness about this because at that time, Kristen could not remember the first 25 years of her life explicitly. There was no access to the knowing that this was something that had actually already happened. She could not get to any conscious, explicit, autobiographical memories from the first 25 years of her life. So she didn't know about that experience when little Kristen first learned how to swim. There was no awareness about that. Yet here she was at a neighborhood pool, and she had this idea to gather some coins, throw them into the bottom of the swimming pool on all different corners of it, and make a game of it, and go underwater and collect them all. And she moved through the action patterns of doing that. Her neurobiological social engagement system was reliving procedural memory data sculpted during the original experience when little Kristen first learned how to swim, and the brain-body system was reliving those action patterns and in the process integrating that disintegrated information. But at that time, Kristen didn't even have access to the knowing of conscious, explicit, autobiographical memories from childhood. The story I just told you about little Kristen learning how to swim for the first time was not something that Kristen could actually even know about last year. Yet her brain-body system moved through action patterns to relive those experiences implicitly. It's absolutely miraculously fascinating and expansively, infinitely astounding. The miraculous wonders of the brain-body system, even when completely dictated by trauma-related wiring, there are so many miracles. And we are always allowed to honor the beauty of the miraculous wonder that we are, no matter what that looks like, no matter how our parts of consciousness are encountering themselves or life, no matter what's happening within us or around us, we are allowed to marvel with awe and wonder at our own divine existence. Dissociation is allowed to be beautiful. Trauma-related health challenges are allowed to be miraculously astounding. We are allowed to marvel at the wonders within us, no matter how those wonders are affecting us. Because there might be some deeply unpleasant sensations in this process, to say the very least. Super big understatement. But even in the terrifying unpleasantries of trauma-related health challenges, there are trillions of miracles happening inside of us. And we are allowed to create space for awe and wonder at the miracle that we are in every single moment. Dissociation is allowed to be beautiful, even if it doesn't make sense, even if XYZ, XYZ. Because when we shift the dialogue about how we perceive these experiences, we expand our compassion and our love and our presence. And that is the energetic space where we find our infinite power. Once we embody our power, we can transform anything and everything. But as long as we are resisting who we are and what we're going through, we are losing access to our power. We are forfeiting an opportunity for loving liberation. Once upon a time, teenage Kristen was about 13 years old. And she was a pretty cool kid, I've got to say. She was a pretty neat kid. She had this really fun idea to have a pair of skinny jeans and to have all of her friends sign it in different colored Sharpies. And it was just a way for fun expression and a way to be different. And then she kind of was basically gathering energetic pieces of love from her friends and energetically wearing them whenever she wore this pair of jeans. So it was just a really fun experience to go around with this pair of jeans and all these colored Sharpies and be like, here, you want to sign it? And different people would write their names or a fun quote or just something nice and fun. And she wore this pair of skinny jeans and it was all covered in beautiful writings. And it was really just a fun experience for 13-year-old Kristen. 14 years after that original experience, that only happened one time, I want to add. Having a pair of jeans decorated in colored Sharpies where people wrote stuff on it was only something Kristen did one time. One pair of jeans. One time that this happened. And then 14 years later, while Kristen's brain-body system was progressing through final stages of neurodevelopment that had been halted because of early childhood trauma, Kristen experienced automated action patterns leading to experiencing that exact same style of experience all over again. Kristen had automated styles of thoughts, feelings, and ideas, urges, longings, impulses, desires, action patterns that manifested through different thoughts and feelings, basically. And it led to Kristen getting a pair of skinny jeans she had tucked in the back of her closet, getting out a bunch of different colored Sharpies, and writing all kinds of things on them. that experience, Kristen's brain did not have the instinctive access to explicit data. So here I am now, and I understand the adult I am today, and I can look back at the experience from 13-year-old Kristen, where she had that original experience of the skinny jeans with drawings on them in colored Sharpies. And I can look at it explicitly. But last year, Kristen couldn't do that. Kristen was not an explicit, solidified sense of self and a present-day adult sense of awareness due to unique styles of brain-body activity. And in that process, she was reliving the implicit data rather than explicitly remembering it. She was implicitly reliving the data rather than explicitly remembering it. Implicit reliving, explicit remembering. Last year, Kristen was implicitly reliving. I now have a neurobiological capacity for explicit remembering, but Kristen didn't have that just a year ago. Once upon a time, little Kristen loved a TV show called The Saddle Club. And it was this really fun, cute, horsey show where there were these young girls and they had all kinds of adventures at a horse stable. And the experiences of the main characters in the Saddle Club perfectly reflected what Kristen was experiencing based on the stage of neurodevelopment that she was in. It was like pre-adolescent time period of life, and what the main characters in the Saddle Club were going through perfectly aligned with how Kristen was starting to experience her sense of self as her brain and body developed. I'm guessing this was approximately ages 10, 11, 12. Then, approximately 16 years later, while Kristen's brain was healing last year, Kristen went through automated action patterns that led her to watch a show called Free Rein. And Kristen regularly watched this show. And the show totally, completely, in every possible way, mirrored the Saddle Club that she had watched 16-ish years ago. Because rather than Kristen being a present-day adult self, able to explicitly remember her childhood, she was experiencing the neurobiological activity from that childhood, while the brain and body system gradually healed and progressed through the halted neurodevelopment that resulted from childhood trauma. So profoundly miraculous and just uniquely astounding. 16 years after that experience, Kristen's brain and body were going through such a specific style of automated activity that it was able to recreate that exact style of experience. To find a show that completely mirrored that original show and to watch it in a way that mirrored the time of watching it. When a 20 or 30 or 40 or 50-year-old grown adult watches a television show that's intended for children, the automated brain-body activity interprets it differently than automated brain-body activity of a child who the show is intended for. During these unique dissociative experiences, Kristen's brain and body were interpreting the experience of watching this show called Free Rein the way that a 10, 11, or 12-year-old's child's brain would interpret that experience. Because that's where the neurodevelopment of brain-body activity was stemming from, while these miraculous structures were reconstructing their own organization of the neurobiological social engagement system. After all the different traumas had been healed, after all the different many states of consciousness had gone through their own unique progressions of completing stages of neurodevelopment that had been halted. After so many years of all that, then there was a final go-around of progressing through neurodevelopment through the year of 2020, where Kristen's brain-body system finally allowed all states of consciousness to grow into the neurobiological adult that I now am today. So profoundly unique. Once upon a time, little Kristen made a board game, and it was so exciting to make something new. Little Kristen loved to play board games. There was a big closet filled with board games, and she would love to dive in there and pull some out and play. And she was so amazed that there's like this board and there's these spaces and there's cards and dice and different little pieces and all these rules about how to play a game. And like, it was such a cool experience as a kid to play board games. So clever, creative little Kristen, I'm guessing around age 10 years old or so, decided, what if I made my own board game? And then I could make up the rules, and I could choose how the spaces go, and I could decide what goes on the little cards that sit in the little spots on the board in this game. And it was such a neat idea. So she got a big thing of paper or cardboard or something and made all the little spaces and made up her own board game. And it had pieces and cards and rules and spaces on the thing, and it was all done up, and she made her own board game. And it was super fun and it was super cool, and she loved the process of making the board game and then playing it with her friends and family. Then, 16-ish years later, Kristen had created a brand new diagram to explain unconscious body minds in brand new ways. And you can explore the final versions of these diagrams in my Liberated Consciousness book, which I'm super stoked to share with you, beloved soul friends. Before the book manuscript was written, however, Kristen was like, I have this amazing diagram and I really want to share it because I think it could help a lot of people, and then everyone can understand what's happening inside of themselves and inside of each other, and the world will be a better place. And so Kristen went through this process of brainstorming. What creative way can I share this diagram with the world? Automated styles of thoughts, feelings, sensations, action patterns, etc. led Kristen to exploring how to create a board game that could share her diagram and all of its miraculous details in a fun way, so people could play with each other while learning to understand their subconscious parts. And Kristen went through this series of experiences over several days, possibly a week. I'm not entirely sure as I continue recovering details from the unique amnesia I've encountered. But during these experiences in 2020, 16 years after Kristen made the board game, which was only something that ever happened one time, Kristen went through a process of experiencing action patterns that used the new ideas, which was the diagram that she'd created. New ideas were engaged with action patterns from childhood. And so there are these new ideas, but the application of the new depended on implicit action patterns from the old during these unique dissociative experiences. And so Kristen wasn't a present-day adult self who had created an idea. She was someone with an idea, and how to embrace that reality directly stemmed from this unique dissociation where independent neural activations unconsciously relive data from that time when she made a board game over a decade ago. And it took me a long time to figure this out. I'll be totally honest. Those experiences baffled me for so long. They felt so strange and very inexplicable and just very unique. Like, it was really hard to understand what was happening at the time. And even many months later, it took me over a year to figure out what was happening in that experience as my brain and my body continued to heal and I continued my research and my case study, etc. So it took over a year to actually figure this out in particular. At the time, it was not clear at all that this was what was happening. And it felt a little confusing. It felt a little confusing because Kristen was trying to understand who she was now, but that neurobiologically wasn't possible because her brain-body system wasn't in an automated understanding of who she was now, because it was busy reliving data from early childhood, because the brain and the body were progressing through final stages of neurodevelopment that had been halted all those years ago because of early childhood trauma. So profound how dissociation can manifest, and the infinite myriad of ways where early childhood trauma not only impacts neurodevelopment, but impacts brain-body activity throughout life. Because even when we're 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 120 years old, God bless the souls who live that long, even when we're older, how our brain and body engage directly depends on how everything's been gathered through experience based on original neurodevelopment. The brain-body system learn how to configure themselves during the first decade or two of life, and then how all experiences after that are stored in the brain and the body and impact navigation and regulation directly depends on how that original neurodevelopment went. And so if there's any disruption of attachment development, especially when there's early childhood traumas, not just moments of unfulfilled attachment needs, but severe traumas that really impacted neurodevelopment, that can impact adulthood in so many infinite ways. But because we're only directly aware of approximately 0.02% of internal activities, it's almost impossible to have direct awareness about where our experiences are actually coming from, or why, or what to do about it. These hidden subconscious realities are only now starting to be discovered. Never before in human history have we had so many opportunities to explore unconscious body minds. But now we have this amazing, extraordinary gift to understand the parts of our consciousness who are experiencing neurobiological activity beyond our direct perception and immediate awareness. And as we expand this internal understanding of ourselves and others, we can expand the personal power that we embody from within, so that no matter who we are, what we're going through, we always have authority within our unfolding storybooks of life to understand and be there for every part of our miraculous divine consciousness. Once upon a time, little Kristen played a game called Spaceopoly. It was a unique version of Monopoly that focused on different planets in the galaxies, and it's a very cool, unique game. I last played this game when I was little Kristen. Little Kristen, when she was maybe 7 years old, I'm guessing. I honestly don't know, but very young, last played this game. And this game of Spaceopoly has never since been played in my life. During the early months of 2020, while Kristen was progressing through final stages of halted neurodevelopment, she had an idea to have a game night. And she went and asked people if they wanted to join her game night. And on this game night, she went and she very specifically picked the game Spaceopoly. She did not know this at the time, but her brain and her body were reliving the experience of playing that game during early childhood. Kristen was in a unique stage of healing with adaptable consciousness condition, and she still had many, many persons inside of one body. And at least a few of them were age-regressive states of consciousness. And one or multiple of those age-regressive states of consciousness was within the neural networks in the brain and throughout the body that had been sculpted during early childhood. So rather than the brain and the body having complete connectivity and there being one person as an adult here navigating new moments in relation to a uniquely solidified and individualized sense of self, there were multiple states of consciousness, multiple independent inner persons. And frequently they were not fully grounded in a new moment, rather they were within unique dissociative experiences where the brain and the body were reliving different strands of information gathered during the years that were covertly affected by traumatic stress. And so in this experience, Kristen was not a grown woman playing a new game. Kristen was in a unique dissociative experience where an aspect of her inner child was reliving an implicit experience because of unique neurobiological activity. Once upon a time, teenage Kristen loved words and English and quotes and reading and writing. She was absolutely fanatic about it. And that love and passion had been gradually growing over the years. When little Kristen was 9 years old, she named her first rooster William Shakespeare. So literature was kind of just always an internal passion. So once upon a time, teenage Kristen searched on quotegarden.com and found a bunch of different quotes on a bunch of different topics that she was really passionate about. For every quote that she found and loved, she put it onto a typed document with one quote per page in a very large, colorful, and fun font. She then printed out all of these pages and tacked them on her wall. So there was a whole wall covered and artistically placed. They weren't just like hung neatly and concisely. They were kind of angled here and overlapping here and kind of in a fun artistic fashion. There was a whole wall covered in paper, and each paper had one large typed, fun-fonted, colorful quote, and they each had different quotes. It was a whole wall of quotes. And then Kristen would enjoy reading those quotes while she laid in bed. If she laid in bed when she woke up or in the morning, or if she was hanging out and just resting or napping, she would lay in bed and reread those quotes. And once she had a quote fully memorized, where she could think of it and cite the whole quote completely without referencing what was on the wall, she would take it down and put up a new one. And she did this for at least a year, I think. She really enjoyed her quote wall and the fun process of finding quotes she loved and making them all artistic, choosing the font, choosing the color, and having fun placing them on her wall and enjoying them every day while she laid in bed. Then, over a decade later, while Kristen's brain was healing in 2020, Kristen experienced an implicit reliving of those action patterns. While Kristen was still in very unique dissociative experiences, before I was able to regain the neurobiological capacity to create conscious, explicit, autobiographical memories in relation to a solidified sense of self, Kristen relived those action patterns implicitly. through automated styles of brain-body activity, contributing to unconscious navigation. Through automated styles of brain-body activity, the unconscious body-mind navigated unfolding moments in relation to a sense of self encountering life. Through implicit reliving of procedural memory data sculpted during that original experience when Kristen was a teenager and she made her first, quote, wall. And so last year, Kristen went through this process of, I'm going to look for quotes. And she actually went to quotegarden.com. And please note that I have not searched on quotegarden.com since teenagehood. It's been over a decade since I've even typed in that URL. But my unconscious body mind remembers every nanosecond of my life. And during these unique dissociative experiences, there was implicit reliving of procedural memory data because of unique activity and organization of the neurobiological social engagement system, a unique order of these neural structures cause certain states of consciousness to relive specific regions of neural data carrying implicit action patterns within procedural memories. And these are the deepest, most unconscious memories fathomable. And yet they were being relived with profound precision. Kristen could have just looked up quotes online, but no, automatically, instinctively, Kristen's brain and body went and typed in the exact URL that had been experienced over a decade ago, even though there had been no encounter with that website since that experience. And so Kristen went on quotegarden.com, and as she was reading through the quotes, she actually realized that her own writing was more interesting. So she found a photo album that she had created in the past that had quotes in it. And here's another miraculously unique aspect of this fascinating manifestation of dissociation. Kristen looked through these quotes, things that she had written in the past 2 years, and she was astounded at these quotes because she did not have any memory of writing them. And so she's looking at these quotes like, wow, this is really inspiring. Wow, this is really well written. And she's looking at these quotes absolutely amazed by them because she did not have a memory of writing them. A woman in her 20s had written these quotes, but the woman who was reading these quotes was actually a dissociative manifestation of a teenage version of that woman. Absolutely miraculous in so many profound ways. So Kristen went and found a bunch of really amazing quotes that she loved, which were things she had written, but she didn't remember writing them, and she was really inspired by them. And she went into a Word document and put one quote per page, and each page had a different font and a different color and a different size to make them really big, so one quote perfectly filled up one page. And she printed them out, and she hung them on her bedroom wall in the exact same style that she had done over a decade ago. But during that experience, she could not get to the explicit remembering of the original experience when she was a teenager. That's something I could do now. Kristen couldn't do that a year ago. Instead, she was experiencing a miraculous, implicit reliving of that neural data. Just amazing and astounding the way the brain and the body operate. Brain-body activity is always miraculously astounding. But when we explore unique experiences, such as dissociation, age regression, or other unique manifestations of personal experience that stem from trauma-related health challenges, the deep, dynamic, detailed depths of the miraculous wonders of brain-body activity grows even more astounding. And when we can create space to marvel at the mystery that we are, we expand our love and our presence, and through our own self-compassion, we grow our power. And the more that we embody our power, the more we can be there for every part of our divine consciousness, no matter what we are going through. Once upon a time, teenage Kristen was working on a book manuscript, a collection of poems. She actually went through and completed 3 poetry books during her high school years. During this process, she redid her quote wall. So after about a year-ish, there had been quotes on this one particular wall in her bedroom. She took down all the papers with the different colored quotes, and she redid the wall so it was filled with pages of her book manuscript. And so her whole wall was rows and rows and rows of printouts of her book manuscript that had a bunch of different poems that she had written. She found it easier to edit her book this way. Rather than sitting and writing and reading in this capacity, she would stand and look at different pages on her wall and edit them as she felt inspired. She didn't have to start on page 1 and go there. She could just kind of glance around and pick any page and edit as she felt inspired. And it was a very cool process for teenage Kristen to go through as she learned about all the miraculous wonders of writing books. Little Kristen had been writing books for many years. She was an old pro at chapter novels. But teenage Kristen expanded this passion and began creating poetry books. These experiences of being in the middle of a project of creative self-expression and creating a wall that was covered in printouts of her ideas while she worked on creating a book of her own, created implicit neural data that was stored in the neurobiological social engagement system of my miraculous brain and body. Then, over a decade later, while Kristen was healing and teenage Kristen was manifested in physical form through unique dissociative experiences, those action patterns stored in implicit procedural memory data were automatically, unconsciously relived. But she did not know that that was what was happening at the time. Kristen in 2020 went through this process where she had created new diagrams to explain unconscious body minds in fresh ways. And these are called the Pyramid of Personhood and the Liberated Consciousness Diagram. Final versions of these diagrams in all their great dynamic detailed depths can be explored through my book, Liberated Consciousness, which I'm super stoked to share with you beloved soul friends. Before that book manuscript was written, however, Kristen was like, I have these ideas, what do I do with them? And so she went through a process of creating a book manuscript that had all of her ideas and she printed out drafts of the diagram and hung them on her wall. Originally, she was actually wanting to get her idea patented. I was in the process of creating a patent application. That was one of the ideas that Kristen had gone through about, what do I do with this really amazing diagram I've created? And so she was creating a step-by-step way to understand unconscious body minds. And she was writing the detailed draft of these ideas, and on her bedroom wall was taped up in order the different diagrams that explained each step required to understand unconscious body minds. Eventually, the patent application reached several hundred pages, and she wondered if maybe she should just write a book instead. So she continued writing, and then she realized, I'm Kristen Windsor. And her brain kept healing, and then she restarted writing the book manuscript, and that is the book manuscript that I'm working from today. So 2020 was quite a fascinating year of growth, to say the least. But during the original stages of this process, Kristen had a wall that was filled with printouts of her diagram drafts that she was working on. And the other astounding aspect of this, that I may or may not just be piecing together now, which makes it all the more epic to share with you, beloved soul friends. The even more astounding aspect of this was how Kristen in 2020 would lay in the bed that she slept on that was right by the wall that had all these hangings. And she would look at them and edit them as inspired. Rather than it being something she went to intentionally and methodically or worked on at her desk, she would just be randomly laying in bed morning, afternoon, evening throughout unfoldings of everyday life. And during those times, she would just kind of study them casually and edit them as inspired. And she would add notes to them. So then when she went to go work on typing the draft, there was new notes to reference, but she just allowed it to flow rather than trying to be like, okay, I need to edit this and I need to figure this out. It was just this casual thing where she would just look at it every single day, and then new ideas would come, or ideas would have clarity, and she would add edits to these printouts on her wall. So then those updated notes were there when she went to go do the more disciplined aspect of writing the details of this draft. And that process, the action patterns of those choices, the choice to have the printouts, the choice to have them on the wall, the choice to look at them every day while laying in bed, the choice to add notes throughout the days just casually here and there. All of those little choices were coming from implicit procedural memory data from the original teenagehood. So while Kristen was in a dissociative form of teenagehood, while progressing through final stages of neurodevelopment in 2020, those action patterns were relived. And the project was obviously different. Rather than creating a poetry book, it was a book to understand unconscious body minds in new ways through fresh diagrams. But the action patterns regarding how Kristen moved through the process were coming directly from that neural data sculpted over a decade ago. So astoundingly profound and divinely miraculous. It's also astounding how the unconscious body mind remembers things with such profound precision. Because during that unique dissociative experience, Kristen could not explicitly remember details the way I'm remembering and sharing them with you now. Kristen's brain did not have that potential or capacity because of how it was uniquely wired at the time. Nevertheless, the implicit details were remembered with such profound precision that the action patterns mirrored past experiences, even when those past experiences could not be explicitly remembered. And it kind of shows the power of how our brain and our body remember stuff that we don't. So we're up here in our everyday lives moving through moments, but the way that our unconscious body mind is miraculously providing automated styles of navigation regarding self and life, or regarding our identity, and how this uniquely individualized sense of identity interacts with all the different facets of life, different relationships, employment, all the different features and components of the miraculous human experience. The whole way that our brain and body know how to navigate self and life stems from neural data sculpted during past experiences. And often, our navigation is more of an implicit reliving than a brand new experience, but we don't know about that. The whole way our brain and our body are navigating now, and this new now, and this new now, and this new now, and the potential of now tomorrow directly stems from neural activations from data sculpted during past experiences. So that moment when you were 5 years old, that moment when you were 10 years old, that moment when you were 15 years old, is impacting these moments when you're 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 60, 70, 80 years old. But the self will not know about that explicitly because it's happening through implicit neural activity. So the unconscious body mind remembers everything. And even if we don't consciously remember something, that neural data is impacting automated styles of navigation as consciousness flows through the brain-body system. It is such a profound hidden reality that everyone is encountering in every moment of every day, but might not know about. It's so incredible. Honestly, I could continue this storytelling for hours. There are so many specific examples I've discovered while recovering more memories from the unique dissociative amnesia I've been encountering. There's so many instances where Kristen's brain and body were reliving implicit data without an ability to explicitly remember, while neurobiological structures were reorganizing themselves as the brain and body completed stages of halted neurodevelopment during the final phase of healing with adaptable consciousness condition. There were so many unique dissociative experiences where implicit procedural memories impacted decisions, choices, and action patterns, and implicit emotional memories impacted automated styles of thoughts, feelings, sensations, etc., because the brain and the body were implicitly reliving different pieces of neural data from original stages of neurodevelopment, while going through the final stages of neurodevelopment, even though this body was 27 years old. All in all, when implicit memory data independently activates, it can contribute to automated styles of personal experience by provoking unique dissociation within unconscious navigation. So we navigate ourselves in life based on how neural data contributes to conversations of consciousness beyond awareness. And if all of this data doesn't have complete connectivity, and this portion over here activates independently of all this other data, then this data is providing the dominant voice of navigation within unfolding moments. And if this data is from 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago, then choices and feelings and everything else going on internally to impact inner and outer realities, inner sensations, thoughts, feelings, external choices, decision-making, perceptions, responses, etc. That reality of navigation that's instinctively occurring is directly stemming from this region of neural wiring. And then this is impacting now without all of this other data having an opportunity to contribute to unfolding moments. And this can create unique dissociative experiences.